As a child, I was a huge fan of anime and trading cards. Unfortunately for me, the older kids were huge fans of bullying the nerdy kids who were into that stuff. It caused me a lot of anxiety, so I decided to quit school and get a job. I became a salesman. Eventually, I became rather good at it. My co-workers even started asking me for sales advice. One day, however, a new guy joined the company fresh out of high school. He noticed I was watching anime during my break and decided to start poking fun at me for it. Still thinking he was in high school, no doubt. However, almost immediately, the other salesmen started ganging up on him. For you see, I was one of the top salesmen at the time, and this guy was just a rookie. He didn't have the right to mess with me, especially with his pathetically low sales numbers. So they messed with him instead. I then realized it didn't matter how socially awkward or nerdy I was. I brought value to the company, and so I was given respect. Respect I never received in school. I'll never forget that moment. The moment I stopped being a nerdy little dweeb and instead a respected top salesman. Then after a while I quit, started a webcomic company, and now I'm a VTuber. Woof. So there I was, on my daily walk through the streets of Tokyo when I appeared to catch the attention of a Japanese girl. After she had stared at me for a good few seconds, she approached me.
Boss! Boss coffee!
She exclaimed excitedly. I was confused. I didn't know what she was talking about. Boss, coffee? I asked, befuddled.
Your t-shirts. It's Boss coffee!
She responded, pointing to my t-shirt. I looked down at my Hugo Boss t-shirt and then I realized. The Hugo Boss logo, a famous brand in Europe, was identical to the Japanese canned coffee brand Boss Coffee.
You like Boss coffee?
The Japanese girl asked, smiling with amusement. It was at that moment I realized apparently this entire time I've looked like a foreigner who was a huge fan of Japanese coffee. Like the kind of otaku who goes to Japan wearing a t-shirt with anime girls on it, except I was wearing that coffee brand. I looked like a coffee weeb. Woof. I own a comic studio, and we frequently contract professional Japanese voice actors for the dubs of our comics. That means I have the power to do this.
いやーどうだい俺にはおはようスキビリギャットシグマリーズを感じているかいお前何を言っているやはり貴様はファナムタックスだフォートナイトフォートナイトフォートナイトフォートナイトフォートナイトフォートナイトフォートナイト
Stop wasting company funds, Doc, damn it!
I never get to have any fun! So there I was, a tiny little child watching cartoons as I usually did, when suddenly a strange new show appeared. It was about a spiky-haired guy who challenged villains to surprisingly intense card games. At the end of each duel, he'd use ancient Egyptian magic to crush the mind of whatever evildoer he had defeated. I just discovered YuGiOh, and like millions of other kids, I was immediately hooked. This was nothing like any cartoon I'd ever seen. I begged my dad to buy me the cards, and I even attended local tournaments. It was so much fun. Then I bought the manga and was surprised to learn it had nothing to do with card games at all. In fact, the protagonist in the manga straight up killed the bad guys, or if he was feeling merciful, turned them insane. The card game doesn't even get mentioned until a bunch of chapters later, along with Seto Kaiba, who was just meant to be a one-off villain. He later became one of the most iconic anime characters of all time, and the card game became so popular that the entire manga got rebooted to focus entirely on the card game. YuGiOh, the trading card game, went on to earn billions of dollars. What's the moral? I have no idea. Capitalism. When I was a child, I discovered this cartoon called Beyblade. It was about a group of kids having overly dramatic battles using spinning tops that channeled the energy of ancient mystical creatures through them. Naturally, I was hooked immediately, and I, along with all the other kids at my school, started duking it out on the playground. One day, I was telling my dad about my wish to be the strongest Beyblader at my school. I asked him if he could help me. He was always good at tinkering with stuff. He took a good long look at my Beyblade, and then he got an idea. The next morning, I showed up to school with an extremely unusual Beyblade. It had a huge metal core locked between the upper and lower parts. It was so heavy that the very second my schoolmates' Beyblades ran into mine within the arena, they were sent flying across the room. That was the day I became the strongest, most powerful Beyblader at my whole school. This lasted an hour or so until my Beyblade caused one of the other kids' Beyblades to break in half. After that, they didn't want to battle me anymore. But at least I got to be an anime villain for one day. Thanks, Dad. When I was a child, there was always all sorts of weird toy lines being released. One time, some of the older kids introduced me to this strange Digimon-like toy called scanners. You could catch digital monsters on your device by scanning barcodes. It took a lot of scanning, though. Most barcodes didn't have any monsters at all. But if you were lucky enough to get a few, you could battle with your friends. And if you were really lucky, there were super rare ones, too. We'd sneak around stores, scanning everything on the shelves, and then run away when the store owners chased us out, thinking we were doing something suspicious. Then we'd hang out at our secret hideout and battle with our monsters. I felt really cool, like I was part of a gang of delinquents who didn't care about rules, sneaking around, secretly catching monsters. The adults had no idea we were monster hunting on their turf. But thinking back, we were just a bunch of nerdy kids playing old video games that had already been released in America years ago. Oh well, we had fun. Woof. Have you heard the legend of the Dog Man? So there I was, attending an anime convention in Germany. I was sitting behind my booth selling comics and merch when I spotted two cosplayers taking selfies with my stand. Thinking to myself that I had an opportunity to do something funny, I took hold of a dog head plushie and threw it gently at them. The two cosplayers who were simply taking a selfie with the standee found themselves mysteriously pelted by a Mary the Dog plushie head, not knowing where it came from. I snickered to myself at their confusion and decided to make a tweet. To all Dokumi attendees, please be aware, there's a strange dog man throwing dog head plushies at VTuber cosplayers by the Merryweather media booth. I later found out from my cousin Lumi that her cosplay group chat had shared the warning and been discussing the mysterious dog man, warning people to be careful in case the dog man would strike again. I took pride in my secret villainous alter ego. Where would the dog man strike next? Nobody knows. Help spread the legend of the dog man. Get your dog head plushies at Merry.moe. Woof. This is the story of how I became the CEO of a Japanese company. I tried to run my comic studio from my home country of Denmark many times. Unfortunately, not a single bank in the entire country would let me have a corporate bank account. After over a year of trying, I was starting to feel hopeless. But then I had an idea. If my home country wouldn't accept my weeb comic business, then surely Japan, the land of anime, would. So I packed a suitcase and got on a plane. I sent over 20 emails to Japanese law firms, but they all declined me. I had no university or high school diploma. I was told there's no way the Japanese government would accept someone like me. I was beginning to feel it was hopeless again when I received an email from a small law firm. I showed up and the lawyer was an older, elegant lady. I pleaded my case to her and she told me,
私に依頼すれば必ずビザを手に入れるわ。
This entire law firm seemed to consist of women, as the 3 lawyers that worked under her were also women. 6 months later, I had a company and a full working visa. I brought them 4 boxes of the finest chocolate from Europe as thanks. I love my lawyers. Woof. I was watching videos on the train when I spotted someone sitting in front of me. He was staring straight at me. I got nervous and looked back down at my phone. I got out at my stop and noticed that the mysterious Leopard Man got out at the exact same station. Walking down the stairs to the main street, I noticed he was following right behind me. I got a bit nervous, so I decided to stop and wait for him to pass. I believe he noticed as he stopped, turned around and looked at me.
俺の隣に歩きたくねえか外人くん
He exclaimed. Huh? I replied, confused. He repeated, as if mocking me.
Fuck!
I had watched so much anime that this guy just came across like a stereotype to me. I very quickly realized I'd probably made a mistake laughing at him to his face. He stared me down. I was getting very nervous now. He laughed back at me, and then he walked away. I sometimes wonder, who was that man? Where is he now? Tokyo is a strange city. Woof. As a VTuber, meet and greets are always difficult. Having to talk to your fans as only a face on a screen through unstable convention Wi-Fi has always felt a bit distant for me. You can't even do autographs. I want to hug and punch and sign autographs for my dog army. So I got on a plane and flew to Singapore to attend an anime con. There was a line of fans waiting to greet me. And then I walked out in person, wearing my nicest suit, my freshly polished shoes, my brocade necktie, and a fully custom-made furry dog head. I couldn't see in it. There was no ventilation, and I could barely hear what anyone was saying. It was pure hell. But I could meet and shake hands and take selfies and hug and autograph for my dear fans. Finally, in person. And beat up my video editor Ben like I always wanted. I'll always love my dog head, even if I hate wearing it. Someday I'll frame it on my wall like a hunting trophy. Woof. Do you remember Man? When I was a child, there was always all sorts of crazy Japanese cartoons being released, and they almost always had a toy line and games to go with it. Pokemon, Beyblade, YuGiOh, and many others. But there was one oddity among them. Man. They were these little plastic robots that could shoot beads at the opponent. The show, of course, made these battles look extremely intense with a Wild West gunslinger theme. In real life, you'd just shoot at each other's Biedermans while avoiding the other's balls. You could load maybe 2 or 3 balls into your Biederman before you had to reload. Of course, I asked my dad to help me make a farm that let me shoot up to 20 balls without ever having to reload. I was never a very fun kid to play against. Woof. I loved playing Yu-Gi-Oh! As a child. My friends and I would duel each other every chance we got. We even announced our summons like in the anime, and when we lost life points we would recoil in pain. It was so much fun. One time I even cut out and painted a bunch of paper stars, handed them out to all the other Yu-Gi-Oh! Players in my year, and we did a Duelist Kingdom style tournament on the playground. We even had special rules, like by the water fountain, water monsters had more attack points, and by the tree, earth monsters were more powerful. Later on, as an adult, I had returned from a year in Japan and felt somewhat nostalgic. I decided to dust off my old Blue Eyes deck from when I was little and attend my local tournament. And then I got absolutely, completely and utterly destroyed after my opponent did a 5-minute long first turn combo with an endless stream of summons and effects, with cards that had a novel page's worth of text on them. What the hell is a link summon? So there I was, wandering through the neon-lit streets of Tokyo when I saw something strange. It was a man with the head of a horse, surrounded by a circle of dolls. He was playing the drums. I walked closer and watched him play. He was terrible, absolutely awful. So awful, in fact, that I almost became entranced with this performance, like I was getting hypnotized. And then, suddenly, he stopped. He was now staring directly at me with his empty black horse eyes. I was getting nervous. My thoughts started racing. Was he perhaps a magical being that could read my thoughts? Was he offended I didn't like his drumming? After what felt like a full minute of silent staring, he lifted a sign and pointed to his Twitter URL. I nodded politely and smiled and went on my way. I completely forgot his URL. Damn it, I kind of wanted to follow him. Woof. This is the story of how I became a famous webcomic writer. So there I was, a teenage boy at my first anime convention. I loved it there, but I didn't have much to do, so I decided I wanted a way to participate in the scene. I immediately walked up to an artist alley booth and asked the lady sitting there, "Do you want to draw my manga?" She said no. Of course, why would you want to draw some strange little kid's manga script? She was a professional artist with her own manga to draw. I think most people would get embarrassed and stop trying at that point, but not me. I took one step to the left and asked the guy sitting next to her, "Can you draw my manga?" Maybe someday," he responded, too polite to say no, so I kept sending him scripts for the next 9 months until he finally agreed to draw one. Unfortunately, the only manga magazine in our country went bankrupt right as we finished the first chapter. But no worries, hooray for the internet! Over a decade later, the artist and I are still working together, and I'm now the CEO of a webcomic studio. My life is weird. Woof!